Good evening. My name is Mark Lindy, and welcome to this evening's candidates debate here at Brockton Community Access. I'm very happy to be here on this side of the podium and not on the other side of the podium as a candidate for office, and I have the two candidates for the 11th Plymouth District here in Brockton and Easton. I'm going to introduce our panel first, which is the chair of the Brockton Democratic City Committee, Steve Foote, and member David Heidke from the Republican City Committee. We had a last-minute change because Craig Pina, who is the chair of the Republican City Committee, had a work commitment, and we wanted to make sure we kept going with this. In the interest of full disclosure, David is a campaign worker for Dan Murphy, so we just wanted to let you know that so everybody's aware of that. So I'm going to start with opening statements first, and there was a coin toss done out in the lobby earlier. Claire Cronin, the Democratic candidate, won the coin toss, and she gets to make the opening statement. So Claire, you have a minute.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, David. And thanks, Steve, for having us here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Claire Cronin, and I am a candidate, the Democratic candidate for the state representative position in the 11th Plymouth District. I grew up in Brockton on Moraine Street over by the fairgrounds. I came from a long-standing Brockton family. My uncle was former Mayor C. Gerald Lucy, and I grew up in a family where politics and government was something of a sport. We found it very important, primary night, election night, watching the results. That was our Super Bowl. I grew up, I went to the Whitman School, West Junior High, and then I graduated from Brockton High, class of '78. When we were growing up in Brockton, things were great. From the earliest of times, it was always easy to get a job. My first job at Connor's Home Bakery in Campello, went on from working there at the Westgate Cinema, and then I worked my way through Stonehill College and Suffolk Law School, waitressing at Tip Top Cafe, which I've spoken about considerably on this campaign, and always gets a nice response. People remember Tip Top and loved it as much as I did. I'm now married and living in Easton to my husband, Ray Cronin. We've been married 23 years. We have 2 daughters, and we've lived in the town of Easton, and bringing our children up in Easton, we've been able to experience as a family all of the good things that both Brockton and Easton have to offer. I work at the corner of Torrey and Pearl Street, where I have my law office. But in addition to that, I've worked for the last 10 years as a mediator. And this is a skill I think that will be really important in making me an effective state legislature on Beacon Hill. As a mediator, my job is to bring people together. Politics, often, I hear this out on the campaign trail, people sometimes are a little disillusioned with the fighting that goes on in government. And I think my ability to bring people together will make for a very successful run on Beacon Hill. I'm looking forward to serving you, as I have served the community in the past, both on the board of the Old Colony YMCA. I was a kid that grew up going to the Y. It's where I learned to swim and cook. And as an adult, I've always tried to give back to that organization that I felt served me so well. I'm very involved in the schools in Easton. I have had long-time volunteer hours as a mother in the schools. And once your kids get a little older, they don't want to see you there. But I serve on the fee board, which raises money for technology and grants in the schools. That is what I've done in the community. I hope to serve you a little more and see this as an opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to get our time cues worked out. That was about 2:50. So Dan, you have more than a minute to state your opening case.
I'll only take a minute or so, I think. My name is Dan Murphy, and I appreciate you having me here tonight, Mark. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, David. Thanks, Claire. I am a small business owner. I have a tax and accounting business based in Easton with several offices. I am a 2-term selectman in the town of Easton, and I'm married with 3 children. I decided to run for this office because I believe there are a couple major issues looming out there for us, and I think I'm well suited to solve them. Number one, we talk about jobs in the economy over and over again. Claire and I agree that this is the #1 issue. This is what we hear from people when we're door knocking. This is what we hear in forums. I believe my experience as a small business person, somebody who's created jobs, My high employee count this year is 30. I've had 30 people working for me. Will allow me to immediately on day one at Beacon Hill step in and help create jobs. I have specific plans when I get to Beacon Hill to help spur the economy. The second reason is, as a selectman, I note that we have a lot of unfunded liabilities and we're kicking the can down the road on a lot of things. That's a great concern to me. In Brockton, there's a $700 million unfunded liability for retiree health care. In Easton, it's $100 million. It's not a sexy topic to talk about, I realize, but I think it's really important. I think we don't talk about it enough here in this state. And I have plans to solve that problem. And I think what real leadership is identifying problems, even when other people aren't talking about them, and coming up with solutions to solve them. I will spare you the complete work history that I have, but I also worked at the YMCA. We share that in common also. We both love the Y. My first job was at Camp Amicus, working for the youth division at the YMCA, and I worked there until I was 23 years old. I went to the Kennedy School, and one of the great joys of this campaign has been back in that neighborhood. Neighbors across the street with signs up for me, walking up and down Ash Street. My old walk to school, which I thought was miles and miles, and turned out to be about 0.2 of a mile as I measured it the other day. So it's been great to get back to these types of things in this campaign. I've really enjoyed it. So I hope I earn your vote here tonight. I hope you agree with me on the issues that we're facing, which are jobs, the economy, and municipal finance issues that we're kicking the can down the road on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, we're going to start the questions now at this point in time, and what we're doing is we have about 1:30 for each question to answer. I'll try to make sure I'm reversing the order on a regular basis. You know, that's the job of the moderator. And if you have a rebuttal, we'll do a 30-second rebuttal. So the first question we're going to start out with is Steve Foote, the chairman of the Brockton Democratic City Committee. Steve?
Yes, thank you, Mark. Brockton voters in the past have shown that residency within the city is an important issue to them. Although both of you have Brockton roots, you both moved to Easton and currently live there. Why should Brockton voters even care about this race when Brockton residents Tom Kennedy, Christine Canavan, and Michael Brady already represent Brockton at the State House?
Okay, and we'll direct it. We'll go next with Dan answering that question first.
All right, so a couple of questions there. Why should people care? Because we're going to represent the city of Beacon Hill. If we can team up with Mike and Christine and Tom, then we can make a formidable team and get things done. It doesn't matter where we live. I think we both share the fact that we both love Brockton. We're both from Brockton originally, and feel passionately about it. Also, the issues that I'm talking about are going to affect everybody. Jobs affect people in Brockton, people in Easton, people in Stoughton, people in Canton, everywhere. The reforms that I'm talking about putting into place will be beneficial to everybody, not just Brockton residents or Easton residents. Two, when I talked about these unfunded liabilities that I keep talking about, it's a $700 million problem in Brockton. It's only a $100 million problem in Easton. I don't say only $100 million. That sounds silly. But if we can solve that problem, it's going to help Brockton as much as more so than Easton. In terms of residency, I believe that you should look for the best person to do the job. I believe that in everything. When I hire somebody, that's what I look for, the best person to do the job. And whether they live in Brockton, Easton, or wherever, I think you look for the best person and hire them. That's been my experience in Easton. We've hired a DPW director and a fire chief in the last year, and went through a lot of resumes, and frankly, I didn't care where they lived. I wanted the best person.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Claire, same question.
Sure, thanks. I think it's really important for the people in Brockton because regardless of where they live or where I live, it's who is going to be representing them. So I think for the people in Brockton, it would be important to know that it was someone that knew their city, learned all about it from an early age and lived it, had a business in the city, and has a vested interest in the city the same way they do. The district is half Easton, half Brockton. No two, that's not going to change. But the point is, do you have a person that understands the issues that are in your community? Do you have a person that understands the issues in your schools? Do you have a person that understands the issues for the small business owner? I own a business myself, which is in Brockton. Does the person understand the issues of families in your community? Certainly I can say my work on the Y makes me very, very familiar with the issues that face all working families in the community today.
Okay, thank you both. Is there any follow-up required to that question? No. Okay. Let's go to question number 2. Dave Heike.
Good evening. What specific effort do you plan on taking up in your first 90 days of office?
Okay, and this one will go to Claire.
First effort. Well, first I'd like to, I guess in one sense, hope that I get assigned to a committee that would be favorable to the interests that I like to pursue or that I think will make a difference in this district. I think I've always had an interest in education, so I would be hoping to perhaps be on that committee. I'd, at a first start, do what I've always done, which is work well with other people. In my mediation business, the first thing that you probably do is try to introduce yourself around, meet the people there, find out what is important at the State House, what the priorities are, but mostly take the priorities of this district back to the State House. And what I would try to do is, you know, I know what the issues are, make sure I met the key people at the State House that I thought would help us solve these issues for the district, and start working right away, very quickly for that.
Okay, Dan, same question?
Yeah, I'm going to be a little more specific. There are several things that, that I want to get done right away. First is, I think that the State House should be subject to the open meeting laws like we are in cities and towns. Currently, they can go into a back room and meet, and I don't think that makes any sense. I think they should be required to follow the open procurement laws. Last night I sat in a finance committee meeting and we went through how we bid on contracts and all that sort of thing. We had 5 pages of how it works, and we're subject to that, and they're not at the State House. I would want to change that. And most importantly, when I get there, I want to file legislation that'll create a tax credit for small businesses. When they hire somebody off of unemployment, they get a credit on their unemployment tax. I think that's critical. One of the problems with hiring right now is people are worried about the uncertainty and their tax issues. And if we create an incentive for people to hire, it'll create jobs, it'll encourage them to hire, and it'll also lessen the strain on the unemployment system. So those are 3 specific things that I want to get done right away. In terms of committees, I'd like to be on House Ways and Means. It's number 1. In the last term, 2 freshman Republicans got on the committee, Angelo D'Amelia and Shauna O'Connell, and I would lobby to be on that committee because I think it's very important.
Okay, thank you. Is there any follow-up to that? Anything you want to add, Claire? Or?
No follow-up.
Okay. Next question is Steve Foote for Dan Murphy.
Governor Patrick recently approved $300 million for improvements to the community college system, yet Massasoit Community College did not receive any money. As a state representative, what would you do to try to get some funding for Massasoit, and would you question as why they were overlooked?
To me?
Yep.
Yeah, that was disappointing. That's been in the pipeline for a long time, that science building. And I think it's critical. I don't want to be critical of the people that are up there because, frankly, I don't know how hard they worked on it. One of the things I learned before I got into town government was you don't want to take shots at people from the outside because sometimes things are hard to do. So without being critical of them, I would say that we got to join together. The reps, the senators represent this area. And it's not just a Brockton issue. Massasoit covers several communities around. And take a leadership role and lobby to get that building done. And it's very important. We seem to be getting the shaft on that. It's been several times. We've been too far down the list, and I think it's time.
Okay. Claire, same question?
Yeah, I think right now there are talks trying to expand the Massasoit camp community down into the Brockton downtown area. I think that's a good thing. One thing that has come up short for Massasoit is the nursing program. There's a long waiting list. There are people ready and willing to go into the program, and the funds haven't been there. I think I would make that a priority. I strongly believe that the community college system is one of the most important things that exists in this community. It serves so many of the students in the area. It's a great, affordable way for students to earn their college credits if they want to go on to further school after that. I have a friend that she had this exact scenario. Her daughter was admitted to Northeastern but had a January admission. She was able to go to Massasoit, take 5 courses, go in January for less than, you know, a third of the cost. And so it's a great source for the community. It's something we should invest a lot of time in, and if given the opportunity, it's an area that I would devote a lot of time to.
Okay. Anything additional from either
Just a
candidate?
quick follow-up.
Dan?
So I
okay,
agree
30
that
seconds.
Massasoit's an incredible asset. My brother came back from Iraq when he was 30 and went over there and did his associate's degree and is at UMass Boston now, and it was a Huge benefit to him to have that low-cost local option. But the question was specifically about that $300 million bill and why we didn't get that. I think we need to fight for that specifically.
Okay. Claire, anything else to add? No? Okay. Next question is Dave for Claire.
Brockton is very reliant on local aid for basic services like public safety, and this affects the residents of both communities. What proposals would you bring to the table in Boston to help us with that shortfall?
Yeah, we've had a considerable shortfall. In Brockton alone, back in 2002, we're short $8 million from what we had in 2002. At this point, the proposal would be to grow the revenue base here. I wouldn't be proposing new taxes at this point in time. I think when we have in the last 3 years, since 2009, there have been no tax increases or no fee increases, and I think the legislature has done a great job of working with what we have. I think the idea of growing the pie is what we should be focusing on, rather than looking to raise taxes or anything like that at this time. Of course, no one has a crystal ball. And if you ask anyone up on the Hill now, until we look at the numbers, we don't know what we're going to need to move forward. So at this point, it's mostly, until we get the look at the numbers that are put out, there's not much that we can do at this point.
Okay, same question, Dan?
Yeah. There's a concept called reversion, which probably nobody really knows about, or very few people know about, and it was in the last legislative term. And the concept is that if the growth exceeds projections, that automatically money goes back to cities and towns. Year before last in Easton, we got another $70,000. Saved a firefighter job, police job. Was critical. It is in this year's budget again. If that happens, things aren't looking fantastic for that, but it's in there. If it happens, Brockton's was about 5 times that. It was in the several $100,000 range. I would fight to get that concept permanent. So anytime there's extra money, it should come back to cities and towns. And it's critical. That $70,000 was a lifesaver for us 2 years ago. We were facing firefighter cuts, police cuts, and it was $70,000 in the fall. So reversion, which again is not a term that a lot of people know about, is very important, and I would fight for that to be permanent.
Okay, any follow-up, either of the two candidates on that?
Well, that does exist now as it stands. But what we would have to do, I mean, that only comes into play if there is excess. We don't know if there will be excess.
Okay.
Yeah, it exists now, but it's voted on every single year. I want to make it permanent.
Okay. Next question is Steve Foote for Dan Murphy.
The Massachusetts State Lottery is one of the most successful in the country. Yet Massachusetts does not allow lottery players to claim losing tickets against winning tickets to ease the taxes a lottery winner has to pay. This is allowed on the federal tax return. Would you favor